The theme this morning is love. Love of a city. What is love of a town? Say, love of Chicago. Is it someone saying that this is the most beautiful city? Or this is the most growing of cities? Or we have the prettiest parks? Or we have the prettiest lakefronts? What is love of a city, really? Thought we'd call upon our guest this morning, NelsonAlgren, certainly our most distinguished writer, and in many eyes the most poetic chronicler of our city. His book dealing with Chicago specifically, that is his nonfiction book dealing with Chicago, has been described as an eloquent prose poem of love for a city. City on the Make, Chicago City on the Make, that soon will be reissued. Well, Nelson, what of this matter? I know it's been in the news lately that Chicago's reputation has been injured, has been tarnished, specifically by a BBC film producer, Dennis Mitchell.
No, I don't believe that it's been tarnished at all so far as the matter of love of a city goes. Mitchell's interest in the city and the intensity with which he worked, his devotion to the city, is something I think we should be grateful for.
I should point out that you have met Dennis and have seen him at work. You haven't seen the actual editing of it, but nonetheless you have seen the man at work.
And I saw the film he made of Soho, yes, called Morning in the Streets, yes, and a very poetic record, and if he succeeded in getting that sort of poetic record of Chicago down, I'm not at all surprised that there is resentment, because the Chicago press always resents the city being presented poetically. This is never understood. I mean, any book that portrays any aspect of the city that it's more, to use Dennis Mitchell's word, more than a bloody travelogue, immediately earns resentment of the press. And so far as love of a city goes, I said accidentally some years ago, a remark that keeps bouncing back, that in order to love a city, in order to bum rap a city, you have to love it a little. And I think in the same way, in order to boost it, you have to love it a little. And I don't believe that the people who, the retarded Kilgallons, I may call them, in charge of the local columns, who profess love of the city every day, I think what they love is to fill up their columns. And I don't think their interest in the city itself is very deep.
A case of protesting a bit too much, perhaps.
Well, we don't. If Chicago really was interested in itself, we would make our own documentaries. The people of Paris, they're fascinated by Paris. They take pictures of it, they make movies of it, they write stories about it, they do cartoons of it. It's a world. In Chicago, we don't do this, and that's why I don't think we should consider that Dennis Mitchell tunneled under the wall, city wall somewhere, like Achilles at the siege of Troy or something, to get in. But we seem to think we ought to be immune, that somebody should take a picture of the stockyards or drug addiction, and we're not fooling anybody, because the bloody travelogue scene nobody believes in. We should and nobody believes in the myth that the local press puts out, that by hanging art prints in one of the subways that we've beaten the slum situation, or the pride. I don't think we need to, as another paper did, boast on its front page that a magazine called Town and Country has given us a pat on the back. We get pats on the back from the columnists every day. We're in oversupply.
A pat on the back is not necessarily a sign of love. No.
No, we get that. The columnists flood us with it. We don't need Town and Country to tell us we're great, or even the front page report of the English girl who was assaulted in Grant Park last year, and who one of our correspondents got in touch with, and she said what she was supposed to say, that Chicago is a wonderful city. And I mean, I don't think we have to go that far away to excuse ourselves.
I know that you mentioned to me something of David Copperfield Dickens' comment about topsy-turvy values. This concerns the matter of love that is not really love, or that which is called hate that is truly more love.
Well, this denunciation of a film that nobody has ever seen by the speakers for the city remind me a little bit of Charles Dickens's Mr. Dick, who was rescued from the madhouse by Betsy Trotwood, and he looked around and at the world of so-called sensible people, and he whispered, "It's a mad world, Master Copperfield, perfect bedlam." And the reactions to a report that somebody has made a documentary of this city were a lot more idiotic than Mr. Dick. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that even a poor city like Dublin, an impoverished, which is just an impoverished village, compared to Chicago, is much more interested in itself, in its own history, and in its own people than we are.
Of course, the subject of Dublin naturally brings to mind one of its playwrights whose work is now in Chicago, the hostage, Brendan Behan, whom you've met. I know you spent several days with him in Dublin, and you mentioned earlier the mad world in which we live. Someone described Behan as trying to express sane values in an insane world. What of your impressions of Behan during the time?
Well, I first met Behan. That is, I saw him on television. He was discussing the art of conversation with somebody, and somebody who remarked that he thought Behan said the art of conversation is dying, and I think it's you Americans who are killing it. And his opponent said, well, that isn't, conversation isn't the only thing dying around here. At which Behan said, well, you have your people very cheerfully. He said, you have your people and I have mine. And after seeing Ireland, I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's a common remark, of course, that the Irish are vanishing, but then after you see them and see our split level cats, you realize that you don't have to be vanished just to be gone. And I think the great value to our own times of that Brendan Behan has may ultimately not be entirely in the body of his work, which is small, but simply he has brought us back to a recollection of what a man really is. That is, he has reasserted a faith in the individual, which kind of checks our seeming swing to authoritarianism. What I'm trying to say is that the writer traditionally has always taken the part of the individual. That is, the great writers of any time have always been those who took the part of the individual against society, the writers who brought society down from the bench into the dock. And we seem to be swinging over to the side of the prosecutor's office, whereas Behan is his view of the people that don't matter is that they really do matter, which is the same view that Dreiser had and that Whitman had.
Whether they be the accused or not, certainly on the side of the accused.
Yes, but always on the side of the individual. That the individual is the victim.
Yes.
And I think in this he belongs with he has great value, and his assertion in himself of the individual, if the man is having a good time, let him have it. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of resentment that the man is making an awful lot of money while enjoying himself. And I think that
the laughing boys, as he calls them.
Yes, but some of the things he says when he's on the gargle are more sobering than the people who think out the answers.
What of your specific memories of him and his family? I remember you had mentioned some of these to me.
Well, I spent a couple of days with him in Dublin. My impression of him wasn't at all that which you catch in the papers. He wasn't drinking at all. He was drinking water. His mother was drinking Guinness and addressing it as, well, you're a lovely drink. And it was a lovely drink, and his Aunt Maggie was also there. And she's earned great fame in not only Aunt Maggie Trimble. She's not only gained fame with Bayonne, but in the hearts of others, too, because of her moment of truth during the Easter Rebellion, when her husband was a holdout in the post office, and the dead were lying against the dead, and the machine guns were going. Aunt Maggie turned up in the middle of the gunfire and called up to her husband, "Are you going to work tonight or today or not, Mr. Trimble?" And she still doesn't understand why. She still says, when Brendan recalls that, says, "Well, I didn't know if he was going to work or not." And the both of them, these people who are not formally educated people at all, struck me as being deeply cultured in the best sense. That is, they're emotionally cultured. I mean, they're very civilized in their feelings for people. I mean, they have lived with such thoughtfulness for feelings of other people that, well, my impression even of Bayonne's face, of this big challenging jaw, that it seems that if that old barroom saying, "hit him again, he's Irish," hadn't been invented before he came along, you'd have to invent it for Bayonne. But the fact is that it's a face that only appears to be that aggressive. Actually, it's there's a great deal of pity in it. It's the sort of a face that takes great care to hate whatever is furthest away so it won't have to hurt it. That is, his aggressiveness is usually directed at somebody or at something that he won't have to actually do any damage to, which is just a little Irish trick. And
but you're equating culture here. We're so accustomed to the word culture as the actual reading of a book of small print, or we spell it with a capital C. You're equating it with humanity.
Well, I'm equating it with this the striking personality. I mean, Bayonne believes that. Bayonne himself is a proof that of a unique personality, and this we seem to feel a great our split-level people, no matter how outwardly successful, seem to lack the feeling that they do have a unique personality themselves, something that everybody needs. The need of recognition of yourself as a unique person is a very deep need. Otherwise, why would thousands of people be lining up to pay $50 for a key with a bunny on it to find out who they are? And of course, there might be an awful moment. I mean, even if you do pay that much for a key to get in, what if it should be just an empty room? I mean, seriously, what if there's no real self there? What if it's been made up of captions from a nationally known magazine? What if there is no real personality? And in this sense, then all the acquisitions of then the sports car and even the split-level wife and everything that he has doesn't mean anything. then it's then all his family can do is go through his split-level children will go through the gestures of loving Papa and all that, but they can't do anything about him. They can't reach him then. And this is a very lonely story. Of course, we all know this story by now. It's a very lonely one. That's why I put a value on Behan as, well, in his book too, Borstal Boy. It reminds us of what a human being really is at a time when I think we need to know pretty badly.
He doesn't need a metal key
to
find out who he is, really.
He knows who he is. And this, a lot of his pranks, I think, are done in sort of a good-natured derision, because he doesn't need, just as on this TV program when he told his opponent, "You have your people and I have mine," he was saying, I don't need you at all. I don't need your images of success or status. And this is a very healthy thing to see a man who doesn't care at all for status, who puts it at its real value. Nothing. He knows it's nothing.
And yet we know that many Dubliners, probably having seen a hostage, would have walked out on it, or having started to read the Borstal Boy would throw it into the trash bin. Because there again, I suppose, the question of finding out who they are is... Truth, I suppose, can be rather hard and harsh. We're not accustomed to this.
They're very touchy. The Irish are notoriously touchy.
Which leads us to Chicago. Again, you, Nelson, and your Chicago is obviously different from, shall we say, the Junior Achievement Society Chicago, or the Junior Chamber of Commerce Award winner Chicago. Not to say that theirs isn't, but according to their lights, but your Chicago... Do you like Chicago? I will ask you this. Do you like Chicago?
I like my Chicago. I don't like the Junior Achievement Chicago.
What is your Chicago?
Well, my Chicago is just of people that are largely inarticulate in a certain sense, but still know how to say a thing when they have to. It consists of... well, as I was saying before about Brendan Behan, I prefer a man with genuineness of feeling, and you find genuineness of feeling often among inarticulate people. And, I'm not the first one to discover that, because it seems to me the whole history of our best writers has been a constant search for... that genuineness of feeling. I mean, for some reason, our writers from the beginning have always had to go to the person alienated from the middle classes, or from the... they've always had to go from Captain Ahab to Hawthorne's Branded Woman to Ethan Frome and Blanche Dubois and Huck Finn. They're always... in order to find feeling... it's always been necessary for the writer to find it in these people who are outside society. It's almost as though with the growth of the merchandising classes, and with the there's a certain amount of fraudulence essential to successful merchandising, and it's as though that has pervaded the feelings of these classes, so that such a writer as Faulkner, always has to go outside that class to find people who, in other words, it's always the unrespected people and the outcast people who, in times such as our own, who say the honest things.
I know I believe it was Maxwell Geismar who said this of your writings, Nelson. Never Come Morning and The Man with the Golden Arm, and of Neon Wilderness, of course, the short stories. But I think he said it, too, in a different way, of A Walk on the Wild Side, of your seeking, he didn't use these words, the inarticulate, but through them finding the shafts, or shooting out these shafts of truth about self and city.
And you find more humor there, too. I mean, you find a more genuine kind of humor. I mean, it's not... people are more genuinely funny, like Brendan's mother and aunt. They're genuinely... humorous people. I mean, they don't... there are no pre-written gags.
You mean the humor doesn't have to be invented? It's of life itself.
Yeah,
that's...
itself.
perhaps I think the best way to lead from hearing Nelson Algren, writer, talk now about his feelings of self and of city, and they certainly can't be separated, is perhaps to offer a couple of chapters from his... Is prose poem a good way of describing Chicago City on the Make? What form would you say it is? I use this.
Well,
phrase.
it's an essay.
Yeah.
It's an essay. I didn't write it as
offered.
poetry. I wrote it as an essay.
But this is about to be reissued, is it not, Nelson?
It'll be reissued next month, yes.
With the photographs?
I don't know whether it's going to be with artwork or photographs. They haven't decided.
So we'll watch for this again, and before we offer a couple of the chapters from this, here is a quotation, a review in a local paper that is highly reminiscent of reviews, pre-reviews of the film that nobody has seen yet, but of reviews of works that have aspects of truth that hurt. This is from a local paper, a review of Nelson Algren's Chicago City on the Make when it first appeared a number of years ago. A more distorted, partial, unenviable slant was never taken by a man pretending to cover the Chicago story. A book unlikely to please anyone but masochists, definitely a highly scented object.
Yeah, I recall that review. I don't know the name of the reviewer, but I believe it was written by a highly scented object, certainly an object of some kind. The reference to masochists is, of course, now we have to take a choice between, as an explanation as to either we've had a great infiltration from abroad of masochists to interest in the book. I mean, it's gotten a permanent interest in John Paul Sartre's translation abroad. So I feel there must be a great many masochists interested in the thing, or else the little man was just writing in the hope of a pat on the back, one of the two.
Well, your if I may just offer my own opinion of this, a book that I happen...
Or a scratch behind the ear.
Or a scratch behind the ear, a book of which I happen to be very fond, admire very much. This is not a pat on the back for Chicago, but I do believe it's a love song to Chicago in what I feel is a much more deep sense. Nelson, thank you very much. Is there anything else you care to add? That I know you have so many things on your mind about the city, about attitudes, about Brendan Behan. I know they're all connected and related in the world.
No, I'm very pleased that that the book is being reissued. That there's been a demand enough for the book to get an art edition of it out.
Now then, some chapters from Chicago City on the Make by Nelson Algren, and you may judge for yourself how to consider it and the author's feeling toward the city.